So welcome to the round 3 roundup. I actually thought this was going to be the last roundup of the Autumn Nation series, but thankfully there's another round to go. Obviously we've got only 2 games on, Wales, Australia and England, South Africa. You can actually pick a maximum of 5 players per nation, so it's going to be a lot harder to obviously get differentials in there, but super glad that there is another round of the fantasy. Obviously looking at the fixtures or the results from the previous round, obviously the massive shock was Georgia beating Wales. Obviously we'll go into my team later on, but if you watched my team selection video you would have known I backed Wales with my captain and super sub, so not the best option from me. I did back a fair few South Africans. I think they scored something like, I think it was something like 7 tries. It could even be more than that. But unfortunately for me, not many of the players I picked did too well. Scotland were a surprise package too against Argentina. And then also England were a bit of a surprise. For the first 70 minutes of the game, they didn't really perform, but then all of a sudden they just kicked into gear. Then Ireland, Australia, a pretty low scoring match to be fair. I thought Ireland would take that game by the scruff of the neck, but I guess they didn't and only won by 3 points. So overall, a really exciting round, but not so much in terms of my fantasy team. So let's take a look at that now. So taking a look at my team then, obviously we'll start with Wales players first. Captain Josh Adams had a disallowed try and got taken off around the 60-minute mark. Really not a good performance from him and obviously for my captain. Thomas Williams too, didn't have a great game. And then Faletau is probably a bit of a saviour. 54 points for a super sub isn't that bad. However, there's obviously people like Marks who absolutely smashed it coming off the bench. It was between Penaud and Adams to my captain, and obviously I had a stinker here. Penaud scored 2 tries and scored almost 60 points, so just unfortunate and one of those split decisions in fantasy. Looking at my South African players, Dielende, Visa and Mostert, really good points scored from Mostert. Visa and Dielende, albeit not too bad of points, but when they score 63 points away from home, I do expect upwards of 40 to 50 to be honest. Then I didn't actually pick any Scottish or Argentinian players, apart from Van der Merwe on the bench, who scored me just under 28 points. I think Darcy Graham scored like over 100 points with his hat-trick, so one I missed out on there, but if I was going back in time, I probably wouldn't have changed any of my back 3 to be honest. Then looking at England, New Zealand players, New Zealand, Ardie Savea did pretty decent again. Barrett, not great at all, especially for fullback as well. And then Talia, not great, but 16 points, can't complain. And Genge is just a mainstay in my squad, just because he carries the ball so often for England. Finally, Australia and, penultimately, Australia and Ireland. Really good points from Van der Fleer. Sheehan probably could have got a few more points. And Byrne, again, is solid. Always scoring pretty highly for a second row. Now finally is my French players. So Ramos, Penaud, really happy with that. Mofana, I think a lot of people and a lot of the viewers who watch this pick Mofana quite often because he obviously plays centre in the game but is a winger in real life. And therefore he has the opportunity to score a lot more points and a lot more tries. But it just never seems to convert, so I think I'm going to stay off Mofana from the foreseeable future. Probably until the Six Nations come around and he starts on the wing again. But we'll have to see. And as I said, look, should have picked Penaud as my captain, but I guess once again, if I was going back and picking Penaud or Adams, I'd probably still back the Georgia game. However, that's how fantasy works, and I actually dropped off quite a few rankings this week. So looking at the best team of the week then, from a guy called Reese Cleaver. So if you watch him, massive props to you. Captained Kurtley Aronser, absolutely huge. So scored the 2 tries, 250 points as captain. That is absolutely insane. Rico Ioane scored pretty highly as well with 60. Probably should have picked him. Maybe if I didn't have an England bias, I would have picked him. But then again, that's how fancy goes. Van der Merwe, pretty strong as well, had him on my bench. Jack Morgan, surprise of the round, I'd say, with 2 tries, and obviously the loss to Georgia. If they had won by a comfortable margin, he would have been well over the 100-point mark. Olivon, another huge pick as well, got his try. And then, obviously, we need to allude to Marks on the bench. So 111 points. Once again, it's the hookers. The hookers come off the bench, they have the ability to score rolling mauls, but also get over the ball really well and make dominant tackles. So looking at this team, I had Van der Merwe on the bench though, and Mostert and Byrne. So not really an ideal play for me, but I guess this is the way of the fantasy, right? You pick some players, sometimes they perform brilliantly, but other times I guess you get lucky. So as always, let me know how you guys did down in the comments. If you're a viewer, then you probably didn't do too well, seeing as though I didn't do too well either. But really keen to see the points total that you scored this week. Obviously, coming into the last round of the Autumn Nations this week, I'll have a video out tomorrow because all the teams are playing on Saturday, so that means their teams will be announced on Thursday. So look out for that video. As always, subscribe to the channel, drop a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you tomorrow for team selection for the final round of the Autumn Nation Series Fantasy.